In Kent, at a place called Kingsnorth near Ashford, the power company E.ON is planning to build a new coal-fired power station. You might get to know the name Kingsnorth as demonstrators are gathering there for a week-long camp in protest against the whole idea of commissioning new generating capacity of this carbon-emitting form. Indeed, Kent police have secured help from 26 other forces to help marshal the demonstration. Here's what one protester, Patrick Gillett, says it's all about.
Direct action outside the camp will break the law or will do whatever needs to take place to stop E.ON peacefully from profiting from climate change. Last year they made 4.2 billion in profit from creating climate change. We're planning to shut the coal-fired power station down, and we plan to come back when they try to build a new coal-fired power station, because we're the last generation that can do it, and if we don't, then there's no future for any of us.
Well, Energy Minister Malcolm Wicks has labelled opponents of the scheme as naive. He thinks the real problem lies with countries such as China.
Real prize is to develop technologies so that the CCS technology can be retrofitted onto coal power plants in places like China. You know, our decisions about any one application for a coal plant in Britain are pretty small fry compared with the risk of global CO2 emissions in the coming years.
Malcolm Wicks there talking about carbon capture and storage, or CCS. But Conservative MP Tim Yeo, who chairs the Environmental Audit Committee, thinks that was disingenuous.
Government has been very feeble about investing in research into CCS. It's now got a competition, but rather belatedly, for the industry to try and come up with this technology. The fact is we've known for years that we needed it, instead of which they're actually considering approving a new coal-fired power station without making it a condition.
Well, it is a dilemma, as E.ON says the new station is cleaner than the one it replaces. Let's discuss this with Dr. Simon Lewis, researcher in Earth System Science at Leeds University, who'll be participating in the camp at Kingsnorth. He's on the line from Leeds. And Dr. David Brown, who's Chief Executive of the Institution of Chemical Engineers. Thank you both for joining us. David Brown, give us the defence of building a new coal-fired power station now, just as we're trying to reduce emissions.
Well, good morning. The problem we've got is that we need to keep the lights on and we need to look after the atmosphere. So what we need is as much generation capacity as we can get as soon as we can get it. We need to replace about a third of our capacity over the next decade. And realistically, the only way we're going to do that is by burning the fossil fuel reserves that we have. That, of course, means that we need to do it a lot more cleanly, which means we need to roll out carbon capture and storage on a large scale, on production plants, very, very quickly. And what we're saying to ministers from the chemical engineering community is get on with it. The technology is there, it's been demonstrated, all companies use it for getting CO2 out of natural gas. Let's roll it out at Kingsnorth and elsewhere at the earliest possible stage.
And to be clear, you would be in favour of saying to E.ON, if you want to build this station, you have got to provide carbon capture and storage for the emissions.
There's work to be done to scale up carbon capture to the level you would be able to use it on a power generation plant. And we don't want to stop building the Kingsnorth station until everything is ready. We build Kingsnorth, and then at the earliest possible date, we retrofit it with carbon capture and storage.
Simon Lewis, would you be in favour of building the coal-fired power station if we could capture the carbon we were emitting?
If we could, but the proposal for Kingsnorth is just for an unabated coal-fired power station, which is why it's causing all the fuss. I'm personally not against experiments to reduce emissions. They're essential. But if we want to test a carbon capture and storage unit at 300 megawatts, which is what the proposal from the government is, then we should build one at 300 megawatts and not a plant that's 5 times the size. To emit 6 million tonnes of carbon dioxide every year, the amount of a country like Costa Rica or Cameroon emits in a whole year, that's really unacceptable at this time.
So if the issue really just one about sequencing, is that the difference between you? One of you saying we need to get the carbon capture first before we license the station, and the other saying, look, let's start building the station and then sort out the carbon capture later. Simon, is that what it's all about?
I mean, I think that this is it's an essential point that if one of the richest countries in the world can't stop using the most polluting fuel to produce electricity, which is what the Kingsnorth proposal is to do, then how are we going to get an international agreement on climate change that's due to be signed in Copenhagen next year?
David Brown, do you want to answer that point?
Agreements are all very well, but we need to keep the lights on, we need the technology rolled out quickly, and above all, we need the people, the chemical engineers who will implement this technology. We need more of them, and fast.
Your colleagues. Well, Simon Lewis, we've heard the phrase keep the lights on quite a bit this week. What's your proposal for keeping the lights on if we don't build Kings North and other stations like it?
Well, it's fairly straightforward. If we meet the energy efficiency commitments of the government, and if we meet the renewable energy commitments of the government, and then the third stage is to use the cleanest fossil fuels in the most efficient way, which is gas, where we capture both the heat and the power it produces, then we don't need these new plants to fill the energy gap.
I heard some ifs there. I mean, if we hit the government renewable target, how much would electricity cost? Because it'll be quite expensive, won't it?
For energy efficiency, well, that's about reducing demand.
No, renewable power. I'm sorry if I said energy efficiency. No, if we meet the targets on renewable power, they are quite challenging targets. I mean, quite a few people think there's no hope of meeting them.
They certainly are challenging, but we need to meet them. I mean, we have to remember that this is about energy security, but climate change is also a serious security issue, a threat greater than global terrorism, according to David King. We really have to get our priorities straight here, is that we need social policies to keep fuel prices low for those who can't afford them, but we need to keep a stable climate. As Jim Hansen says, who's chief scientist at NASA on climate change, this decision on Kings North is a political tipping point, because if we don't say no to coal, unabated coal here, then how can we say anything to China, India or anyone else? No one will respect the UK's opinion, and it's essential we get a global agreement on climate change.
David Brown, finally, your comment on the idea that we should not be building coal-fired stations, that we should look to renewable energy to fill the gap.
It's not either or. We need all the energy components we can get. We've pushed in the chemical engineering community for a wide mix of renewables, of new nuclear, of clean coal, of carbon capture and storage.
But if we meet the targets,
we need the lot.
If we meet the targets, we don't need to build Kings North if we meet the renewable targets.
It is incredibly risky to rest all our hopes on renewables. Renewables are intermittent. They are not going to provide the energy capacity we need to replace a third of the UK's generation within the next decade. So we need all the sources we can get. It's not an either-or choice.
David Brown, Simon Lewis, thank you both for debating that this morning.